Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too. Like your style when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
Hello, everyone. We're back. Welcome to the first episode of season 2 of the 2026 Formula One season. We are the Fastlane Collective. I'm your host, Brianna. We've got Daniela here. We got Yasmin here. Full team. Girl power, 3 girls for the show. We are so excited to get the 2026 season started. We took a much needed break over the summer. So if you're wondering where the heck we went, we went away. We went away. We needed a break. We love F1, but it was such a heavy season for us. We needed just a good long break. And now we are so ready to go. And we can't wait to dive into the content we got for this episode for you, because we have a whole new regulation for Formula One in 2026, and we want to help you understand it. So we're going to do a little beginner's guide, dive into the 2026 regs that are all new for all of us, including the teams. So we're excited to get into that. But before we do, let's check in with the group. Daniela, how are you doing? You had a busy summer, but also you're back at work, full force in the Formula E season. How's it going?
Yeah, Formula E's kicked off. It's been good. Just trying to get my head back into Formula One. I have prepared all of the research for today's episode, but as always, just want to preface, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a driver. I've done as much research as I possibly could, and so if there is anything that I've missed or gotten wrong, please don't hold it against us. Everything that I have researched has come directly from either the F1 website or from their YouTube or social channels, so if you want to look more into that, I will leave some links in the description below, as well as a presentation that I've made as this year's guide to the regulation changes.
Yeah, Daniela did an amazing job, as always. Yes, we are not engineers. We are just very, very enthusiastic fans that happen to be absolutely obsessed with Formula One. But yeah, not engineers. But I think it's a great way to start off the season with this episode, because this is new for all of us. Like, to be honest, some of these teams aren't even sure how some of these regulations are working for them. They're still working them out, as we saw in testing. But Yasmin, how are you doing? How has your break been back at uni?
It's been good. I enjoyed the break, but I did miss talking to you guys. And of course, I missed talking about F1. Last season, like you said, was so long. And we're back again for like an even longer season. But I'm glad to be back. Uni work, as usual, has been piling up because I've just been putting it off, the deadlines. I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes around and I don't want to. So yeah, we'll forget about that for now. But let's get into these regulations and talk about all the research that Daniela did. Again, please, if you're listening to this, have a look at Daniela's presentation, her PowerPoint. She put in some effort into this. So
She killed it.
She did kill it. So have a look in the description below.
Yeah, Daniela, obviously, can you let people know what you do for your full-time job? Because I feel like if you're new to the podcast, you're like, why are you guys so obsessed with Daniela's research? And it's because what you do for your day job. So share with the people. Share it.
So my current title is Junior Assistant Producer across mostly Formula E, but also a little bit of Formula One. I will actually be working on Australia for Channel 4's F1 coverage. So as part of that, I did put together this kind of document for my work, but also because it doesn't have anything like that cannot be shared, it's all public knowledge. I've also have put this to be out for the public and for us to use on the podcast. But prior to being junior assistant producer, I was a researcher. So my job genuinely was to research everything that you could possibly need to know about Formula One and Formula E. So I do feel like to an extent I have quite a bit of knowledge. But again, I don't see things in the same way that drivers and engineers and mechanics do. So there are some gaps in my knowledge, which I'm working on. But yeah, so that's a little bit of like a behind the scenes of what I do. So that if anyone's ever like, she knows nothing about motorsport, it's kind of my job to know stuff about motorsport. There's kind of like your little preface before we start this season, because some of us do actually work in it.
Yeah, some of us, like Daniela, are freaking working in the sport. So if they say we don't know anything, they can go shove it. Because Daniela works in the sport, but we are not immune to mistakes also. So But you know what? That's the fun of this podcast. No one's perfect, in the words of Hannah Montana. So we're just going to get right into it. Honestly, you guys, I don't know how you feel, but I love the beginning of a season for the regulation change. It just feels like absolute chaos, like everyone's in the dark. We don't know anything. Even though testing is over, we've seen kind of some stuff from that. It's still big question marks around like what's really going to happen out on track and how's it going to play out. Yasmin, do you get just as excited about these reg changes? Does it make you kind of ignite a new kind of love and fire for motorsport in a way?
1,000,000,000,000%. I'm just so excited to get to the first round in Australia and just see how the cars handle. Like, we've got 3 different modes, which we'll get into. The cars are smaller. There's so many changes to these cars that it's not just, oh, we're having this one rule change. There's so many aspects that I think even if you're not really that much of a technical fan, you'll be like looking into what does this mean? What does the overtake mode mean? It's DRS. Anyway, but it's so engaging that like you just have to get into it and watch the first race. Like I will not be missing it. I know it's in Australia and I'm gonna probably be wrecked and tired, but I will be up to see like how these cars perform. And I think it's so unpredictable. Like you go in and you'll watch testing and you think, okay, I think this car is going to perform well, but we haven't seen those cars battle each other for a full couple hour race. So yeah, very interesting, guys.
It is. It makes me so excited too. And honestly, I think it is really something that sets F1 apart from every other sport, honestly, on the planet, because every couple of years, the sport completely kind of changes in how it works, in the rules, in how the cars are built. And if you think about it, there's no other sport on this planet that does that. I mean, you look at sports like baseball, American football, soccer, like those rules really haven't changed since the dawn of the sport. And if they have changed, it's been something very small or minute, and nothing like a full, basically, let's blow up the sport and start again. Daniela, when it comes to that aspect of Formula One, as a fan, is that something that attracts you to the sport? But is it also a pain point for the sport as well to feel like you're kind of starting over every couple of years to understand what the heck is going on out there?
I do quite like it because it does make it exciting and really freshens things up, especially when at times things can get a bit stagnant if you have a team or a driver that is just dominating the field. So I think this has come at a very good time and I'm very excited. But at the same time, I do understand that it can be quite frustrating for everyone involved, whether that's fans or those that work within the teams, because you have to get your head around all of these new rules and regulations. Things that were fine last season are completely different this year. You're going to be penalised in different ways that might have not been a problem the year before, but now that is completely different and you have to not be caught out by these things. So it does make it exciting and different, but at the same time, like, I can imagine for the teams that it can get a little bit painful and they're like, oh God, what have we messed up this time? So they have to really make sure that they know those rules and regulations like the back of their hand.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a whole new world for fans. It's a whole new world for teams as well, which I think is another very interesting thing about this sport is no one really knows how these are going to perform. I mean, the teams obviously have a better idea because they have all that data behind them. But like you said, they haven't run a race yet. And that's the big tell. As we've seen before, if someone can do really well in testing, they get out on the track and it just does not follow through. So today's purpose of the episode, like we said, is kind of a beginner's guide to the new 2026 Formula One regulations. We want to make sure you guys are prepared as possible to walk into this next season. So when you watch the first race in Australia, you have a good idea of what's going on track, what's happening with these cars, and why they're driving the way they're driving. So we're going to go through kind of the 6, 7-ish, I think you could combine some of these into one category, but categories that are the biggest changes and the only changes for the F1 car in the season. So let's start off with number 1. The cars all overall, shape, size, and weight, it's all smaller than the 2025 car and that form of car regulation. So specifically, the cars are around 20 centimeters shorter and 10 centimeters narrower and about 30 kg lighter than the 2025 car. So that's a significant change. And obviously, the smaller the car, the lighter the car, and the more narrow the car makes them faster, makes them more responsive, makes them more agile. So this is hopefully supposed to result in some better racing for us fans and for the drivers as well. Daniela, when it comes to the smaller cars, I know, especially around tracks like Monaco and these street circuits that are just, the cars seem like they're just too big. Do you think this is going to help the format or just the quality of racing we get around some of these tracks and overall on all of our tracks?
Obviously, these are not the most massive changes in terms of size. It is going to have a little effect, but we can't expect Monaco to now be a track where overtaking is going to be a prime moment of every race. I think that it's going to help at some tracks, not all tracks. I'm not saying that Monaco is going to be a track where we're going to see more than one overtake, but I think in other places, maybe Baku, it might help, but it's still not. They're still not small enough for Monaco to have that overtaking that you might see in other championships such as Formula 2 or Formula E. So I think that it's going to make the cars faster, and which is going to make it more exciting, but not necessarily going to have a massive groundbreaking change that I think people are looking for in respect to Monaco.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like you said, obviously lighter is always good when it comes to racing. If you can get the physics down on it, it's always really, really good. And yeah, I mean, I think the cars, that's been kind of a complaint from fans, but also drivers themselves. Like, the cars are too big. So I'm happy to see that this year they've kind of decided to go back. Let's cut some off. Like you said, Daniela, the size difference is not that big of a difference, like 10, 20 centimeters difference, but still, at least we're going smaller and not larger. Let's move on to the number two. Second thing that is changing on these cars is a couple of bodywork things. Now, you've probably seen this from testing, from the reports, but a couple of things that are changing on the body of these cars is, first, there's no more wheel arches. If you've noticed that in the new pictures you've seen coming out, 2025 car had a wheel arch. This does not have a wheel arch, which means the tires, that's also going to help with the tires, but the tires are also a little bit more narrower this year. So hopefully that'll give us some better downforce and grip. The new front and back wings. These have been probably my favorite thing to see so far in testing. Yasmin, how are you feeling about seeing these parts of the car moving? Especially the front wing, I think for us is the biggest difference. That wing being able to move and the back wing being able to move whenever they want on track. How have you seen that kind of play out in testing, and what are your thoughts on it?
It feels so wrong to see the wing move. I don't know about you guys, but when I was first watching like a bit of the testing and just having a look at the design and it was moving, I was like, wait, no, that's not allowed. And I was like, wait, it is. So I think as fans, it might take me a minute to not be like, you're gonna get a penalty, that's wrong. But I love the ingenuity of having like the wings move. I know that the rear wing at least has to move from positions in 0.4 seconds. So there is going to still be rules around that, and the wings themselves are shorter, more kind of, there's more room for aerodynamics. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be really interesting to see play out. See, does it make a big difference? Does it not? Does the design need to change? Because I think going into 2026, we're going to have a lot of like trial and error. Like the front and rear wings moving, that may to us be like, that's going to definitely work. That's going to be incredible, but it might not. So it'll be so interesting to see if it does work and which team is going to get it right, which team is not going to get it right.
I think one of the most exciting things about regulation changes is seeing the creativity in terms of engineering from the teams. And especially this year with those wing regulation changes, we have already started to see some unique perspectives brought in from teams looking into loopholes within the regulations to come up with different initiatives to reduce drag. And I think it's very impressive what teams are up to. We will discuss this a bit more like in our next few episodes as we head to Australia. But that is one part that is making me most excited about these regulation changes, specifically regarding the rear wing, but also the front wing as well, seeing how they are having to kind of adapt, but also have kind of elements of it that they've got a little bit of free reign. On the front wings, there's on the sides, they can kind of play around with that to essentially come up with their own way that works for them. There is no set rule. Like the front of it has to always look the same standard. You have the nose, you have the actual shape of the wing, but the edges, they can do what they like with those edges. They don't have to have them look exactly the same. And every team so far has looked different, which has made it quite exciting. And also the positioning as well of where that nose is on that front wing. People have been playing around with that as well. So I'm excited to see what people have taken from testing and going to bring into Australia and see what is working for people and what's not. And that's another thing that's very exciting about these changes.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was going back and doing some research for this episode, looking at the tech talk, they were specifically, Daniela, talking about those sides that you mentioned. There's a lot of playroom there on the front wing of how they can design them. And a lot of people are pointing out that that's probably the areas we're going to see a lot of innovation happening, in addition to that back wing as well, which is just crazy. And we've already seen that with everyone's different takes on how they want that rear wing to look. It looks like there's about like 3 different ways teams have approached it. Ferrari seems to be that weird outlier innovator, and I just had to mention that because like when I saw that in testing, I was like, Ferrari didn't do that, that's too innovative. And then I was like, oh my god, Ferrari did that. Like who is she? Like, we're innovating, this is weird. Like, I
feel
don't
like
know.
You have to take back everything we ever said about Ferrari, especially last season. We were like, they're so old. They just want to be back in the 50s. They don't care about all this new stuff. And now they come in and do the most innovative thing. And I was like, I literally sat there and went, oh no, I have completely got them wrong. I've been saying that all they care about is the history of the sport and their success in the 50s. But they've just done something that is so out of this world that I honestly couldn't believe it came from them.
I know. I didn't either. Like I said, I was like, Ferrari, who is she? Like, who is this girl that just showed up to the track? Because it ain't Ferrari from 2025, that's for sure. And I was very happy to see it, honestly, because from Ferrari, we don't see a lot of innovation like that, like you mentioned. They're in their ways, set in their ways, and that's how it is. And the fact that they were the only team to bring something like that was also kind of like, wait, no one else thought of this? Like, don't worry, I'm sure they'll all be copying whoever's wing seems more successful. Like you said, Yasmin, we're gonna have to see like who succeeds and who doesn't in this kind of wild west of wing physics and downforce. It's gonna be really, really interesting and something cool to watch develop over this season, which I think we're gonna see a lot of development in both those front and rear wings. So that's really cool. And can't wait to see what that area brings more of and how it affects the racing as well. Another really big body change, or more specifically floor change that happened is with these cars this year is there's no more ground effect floor design. So remember last year when the cars would always crash and they'd be lifted up and everyone would be like, oh my gosh, look underneath. You would see all of these kinds of tunnels underneath to help direct a lot of the wind to create more downforce. Well, now the floor is way more simple, way more sleekly designed, which is going to have less, if pretty much zero, ground effect tunnels underneath the floor of the car, but it has extended the back end of the car to allow for some of those tunnels toward the back. But this is going to provide the cars with a higher ride height and less downforce, actually. So this should help some of those teams that were struggling with that porpoising last year. Mercedes was still dealing with it a little bit toward the end of 2025. So this is supposed to help with that, but also it's creating less downforce. So that'll be an interesting thing to see as well, and that higher ride heights. Uh, it's gonna be a different change, and I think a different feeling for the drivers. Daniela, do you think that this is really gonna kind of throw a wrench into things for the drivers to get used to this higher ride height and less downforce there?
I think this definitely is going to take some getting used to, especially since the last few seasons we have seen a lot more porpoising. When the new regulations were brought in, we saw that porpoising was something that all teams were struggling with. After the first few seasons, they kind of started to get their heads with it. Mercedes, not so much. Um, but now that element has been taken away completely. But the exciting part about these flatter floors is that with the reduce of downforce, this is giving kind of more bandwidth for different driving styles, and therefore is going to kind of like level out the playing field a bit more, which, don't know about you guys, but I think we kind of need in F1 at the moment, because dominance has kind of been taken by one driver and they just ran with it for most of this previous regulation change. So it'd be nice to see if we can have a little bit of more unpredictability and battling out between drivers on track, and hopefully have some new, or like a range of different race winners throughout the season, rather it being kind of like 4 people that we know who's could win a race.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a really interesting one to see kind of how these drivers are going to adapt and how their driving style is going to adapt as well. I found I was watching Isaac Hadjar interview that just came out maybe a month or so ago, and they were asking him like, "Oh, you're getting in a new Red Bull obviously this year, but also like the new regulations, like is that going to be hard to get used to?" And he said something really interesting, and he was like, "I've never really driven the same car twice in a row." He's like, "I'm always having to adapt." So it made me think, with a lot of these changes, are we going to see the rookies maybe adapt a little faster than some of these old timers or old schoolers, as we call them? And it has been interesting because in the press, you've been hearing a lot of complaining from some of the older drivers about how complicated this new car is and how basically they're having to kind of tweak how they drive and learn how to kind of work with these new regulations. And you haven't seen the younger drivers really making that much fuss about it. So it'll be interesting to see kind of whose driving style this leans toward, which driver is able to adapt to what this is going to be like. So let's move on to number 3, which is all going to be about active aero and our new power modes. This has been a big, big conversation ever since the end of 2025, because DRS is officially no more, kind of. We'll get into that in a second. But like we were just talking about, the wings being able to move both back and front during the race, this is going to be referred to as active aero. So the wings can adjust depending where the drivers are on track. So if they're in a corner, the wings are going to close to produce more downforce and grip in those corners. But then on the straights, they're going to open up to give them more of that, straight line speed. And this will be available to everyone at any point on the track for this active aero. So DRS is going away, but it's still there. You just can activate it whenever you want, which will be really interesting. But Yasmin, I wanted to ask you about these power modes. There are 2 new power modes. Boost mode, which does what it says. It gives you a little boost of energy if your battery is charged and you have that energy available to you. You can use boost mode to give you that little get up and go. And the second mode, overtake mode, which kind of sounds like DRS to me. And it's basically, if your battery is charged, if you're within a second and in a certain part of the track, you can deploy overtake mode, which will be available to you to help you aid in overtaking your opponent. Yasmin, how do you feel about these new power modes? And more specifically, how do you feel about this overtake assist mode that just seems like DRS, but instead of your wing opening, it's just an extra boost of energy?
I'm very intrigued. I'm very interested. I always love to see what Formula One can do, what we can really push these cars to do. But I know a lot of fans are not going to like this. I think it's going to divide, not to, like, old fan, not, don't want to just call people old because I've been watching Formula One for like years. My mum was going to be offended. But I think like the demographic of like my mum that like who grew up like Senna racing in like the 90s where it was a lot less complicated are not gonna like this new kind of video gamey kind of overtake mode, boost mode. Um, I've like seen a lot online because I wanted to see what do fans think of this. And they're kind of like, well, this is too complicated for the drivers. Why can't we just focus on good old racing? But I think this is interesting. It may work, it may not. You can use overtake mode and boost mode kind of at the same time. I think it's just a lot to get our heads around. There's so many changes, so many rule changes. But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see really how much of a boost you do get and overtake, DRS, whatever you want to call it. Like what that really does. Like, does it give you that upper hand to overtaking, or will it kind of just be like, didn't really give you that much? But I'm keeping my mind open, and I really hope that these modes do good for the sport, and we do see a lot more overtakes, because it's been something that we've been complaining about in the sport for so long that we're just not getting that action anymore. So we shall see.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think it's a good idea to go into it with an open mind, even with, we're hearing a lot of comments from drivers, from press, from the testing. And I think it's all based on, we haven't really seen it play out yet in real life. So how's it going to work? Danielle, I did want to pass this over to you, obviously, as well, because you come from the world of Formula E, which you guys have had boost mode for a while. Like, you guys have had overtake mode. So how do you feel about kind of these pieces that we've normally seen in the Formula E world kind of make its way into F1, and how do you think it's going to affect the racing?
Yeah, I think Formula E is going to be mentioned a lot throughout this episode, but also just in commentary around these new regulations in the media, on socials, from the teams and drivers themselves. There's already been some conversation around that, and I will come on to that a bit later on. But in regards to these modes, I think even just the words modes just instantly make me think of Formula E. In Formula E, we have attack mode and pit boost, and that's all about like how can we get more energy into these cars, and how can we get the drivers to maximize that and ultimately go faster. And I think that's a similar thing to what we're trying to do here with overtake mode. And I think that these terms are kind of almost what is putting people off a little bit. I think once they kind of realize actually how similar they are to DRS, the active aero is reducing drag. That's literally the point of it, is to reduce drag. But then to be within that 1 second, because you don't have to be within that 1 second for active aero to work. You just need to be within 1 second for the overtake mode to work. And that's where I think it comes down to the specifics, but calling them modes, I think, is what is turning people away. But it's an interesting new development within this, and I think, yeah, you're right, older generations are being kind of turned off by this. And like, this is not for me. But I think we're in this place right now where everyone's saying we want better racing, we want people to actually overtake. With the new cars in recent years, we've been seeing lacks of overtakes, because we need to have these kind of things implemented. It's so rare that we would see drivers overtake without being in DRS, and that for overtaking to happen, unless they're making a really bold, outrageous move, we need something like this implemented. And I think that is what is working quite well with what worked really well with DRS. I think is why it's going to be interesting to see how this works as well. And obviously having the boost button as well, which can be activated at any point around the lap, which isn't just for attacking, it is also for defense as well. And this gives them a boost of power up to 350 kilowatts, which then also acts as a way of saving energy to help the state of charge. And all of these terms we will come on to when we explain like the new powertrains and stuff. I know these words are really complicated. These are words that are used a lot in like electric car world, especially Formula E. So I understand to new fans who don't watch Formula E, I can see why they'd be so disinterested in this. I actually think that once they get their heads around it, they can actually see how exciting it is. Formula E, and I know that I'm extremely biased for being someone who works on Formula E, but it is such a great initiative because the racing is excellent. It's so unpredictable. You never know who's going to win a race. There's so many elements that come into play, so much strategy, and I'm excited that we're bringing an element of that into Formula One with these new modes. Going back to the boost mode is that you can also use it in conjunction with overtake mode, which then also comes into play with active aero. So all three of these can kind of be worked together to make one overall mode, I guess. There isn't a name for it, but that it all comes under one umbrella, which is then going to allow for better racing, better defense, better overtakes, which ultimately is going to make this hopefully a very exciting year for Formula One.
Yeah, I think that you did an awesome job explaining that, Daniela. So thank you so much. I learned a lot just from hearing you talk about it. And I think it might be, to your point, it might be a good suggestion if you're a newer F1 fan, or, you know, maybe you're taking a look at all these modes and active aero and you're like, oh God, this is so complicated. Maybe go watch a couple of Formula E races and see what it's like. Obviously, different forms of racing. But it might help you better understand if you see how exciting the Formula E racing is and put that in perspective, how that could play out in F1. It might get you even more excited. And I also want to make it clear, to be a fan, you don't need to understand all of this. Like, you can just watch and enjoy. I think that's the best thing. Because I think as a fan, I've been a fan for years. All of us have been fans for years and years now. Even looking at these new regulations and these changes and trying to wrap my brain around it, it's intimidating. And it can kind of be a turnoff too, especially when a sport that you do for or watch for enjoyment becomes a little bit more of work. It can be a turnoff for a lot of people, which I totally understand. When a sport that you love and you love just to sit back and enjoy becomes now kind of like a job and work to understand. It will be interesting to see not just how the drivers react to these changes, but also how we see the fan base react to these changes. You two have already mentioned the older fan base kind of having some trouble like wrapping their brains around it. I mean, and I think newer fans and fans that have, you know, like us, who have only been on this earth for 20 or some of us 33 years, are still having some trouble wrapping our heads around it. And that's okay. I think that's part of the sport, part of being a fan. And also you get to choose. Do I want to really dig into this and get into the nitty gritty, or do I just want to sit back and watch a really good race every weekend?
I think we also kind of have to look at these regulations from a slight marketing perspective. Since Drive to Survive, Formula One's goal has been to reach new audiences, especially younger audiences. And I think having these modes, which Yaz actually summed this up perfectly, you said that these were like gaming terminology. They are really trying to tap into that younger audience who maybe wouldn't necessarily be interested in motorsport or F1 formally. And that's also kind of what Formula E does. It has all of these terms. It's very gamified. You have attack mode where you have to go off the racing line, and it looks a little bit like when you're in Mario Kart and you go over the little speed bumps and then you go really fast. It's kind of the same premise. Like,
it totally looks like that.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Really does.
And also, the TV graphics also help that. But that's what I mean, is like we have to kind of think about what's F1's initiative here and what's their goal. They have been rich in history for many years, having started in 1950. We're now 75 years into Formula One. We then saw that they had such a different gameplay when it came to Drive to Survive. They wanted to bring these new fans in, and it has worked incredibly well, like so well. Prior to Drive to Survive, if I mentioned Formula One at school, no one knew what I was talking about. Drive to Survive came out, and now everyone knows what Formula One is and wants to talk about Formula One. And it's amazing that it makes the sport so exciting. But we do also have to recognise that there are going to be some fans that are going to find these changes hard. People don't like change. It is a fact of life. But sometimes change can be exciting. And I think that this very moment is one of those. I think that this is the shake-up that Formula One has needed for the last 5 years. It's bringing some big changes. The last regulation change didn't actually bring that much difference. Like, there was a bit, and it led to the dominance of Max Verstappen, but the regulation changes weren't like excruciatingly massive in the way that these are this year. And that is why personally I know I keep saying it, but genuinely I'm so excited for the season to start. I haven't stopped bombarding these girls with messages about how excited I am. I kept saying, can we please film? I've done all this research. I'm so ready for the season to start now. And this is the first time in years I actually felt like this. Normally, I'm not quite ready for the season to start. I'm like, oh, I've got so much other stuff to do. Like, Formula E's kicked off. I just need time. I'm like, no, give it to me now. I feel like we've been talking about these regulations for such a long time. This has been years in the making. And now we're finally going to get to see what these cars look like on track and how they handle all of these different modes.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And I think you said it perfectly, Danielle. Like, this is the shakeup that F1 has needed. And every time you have change, there are going to be haters. They're going to change is scary. And especially when like you're so connected to a sport that you love so much. Like Yasmin, you mentioned like your mom has been watching since the Senna days. Like, you want to protect it. You want to keep your baby safe. And I think that's what maybe some of that older generation is feeling right now is this change can be scary, and change is scary for all of us, but good can come from change. It brings me back to like when I worked in baseball, we would always joke that like, I mean, American baseball is one of the oldest sports on the face the planet, and has undergone pretty much no change since its inception. And because of that, the fan base has disappeared. And this is so sad to say, but we used to joke like that our fan base was dying off. Like, what were we going to do once they were all dead? Because nobody else was really like watching baseball besides like that core audience, who were, some of them were in their 80s at that point. Sports needs to evolve and needs to change with the times and with the viewers and with the world, honestly. And I think that's what we're seeing here with these 2026 regulations. Yasmin, really quick before we jump off kind of, this boost mode, power mode, active aero kind of thing. As a fan for yourself, like you mentioned, you are excited, but you're also like a little nervous. Do you think that these changes will kind of usher in also a new fan group for Formula One? Maybe some of those people that are really into gaming. What are your thoughts on it from a fan perspective?
I think they would definitely bring more fans that like the technical side. Like, say, I know like more people are into different types of motorsport which are a bit more technical, or even other types of sports. So maybe those who like to kind of go into more of the strategy, more in depth into their sports would probably be interested. Do I think that like gamers are gonna get into it? I don't think so. I think that it's, to just name two things like a gamer phrase and they're gonna have people jump in. I don't think so. Formula One can hope, but I know the F1 video game's cool, but I don't think so. But still, I think it'll be really interesting to see. And I know I said I'm a bit worried, but the more we talk about it, the more I'm kind of like you, Danielle. I'm like, give it to me now. Let's see what it's like. Like, come on, guys. Like, it's next week we're going to be seeing these cars on track.
That's crazy. Yeah. I think you're right too, Yasmin. I think like there's been so much talk around it, and it's just like, I just want to see it like for real in real life. Like, I want to see if it's going to work the way everyone thinks it's going to work. And I think that is very much a characteristic of these regulation changes these years when this happened is just kind of like, let's see it on track. Let's see if how we think this works and what the data is giving everyone and the wind tunnel tests are going to show up on track. Because we know sometimes that doesn't always match. So let's move on to the last two parts of the regulation change. I think we're on 4. I lost count now at this point. Fourth thing that is really, really changing has to do with the power unit changes. It's still a 1.6 liter V6 turbo, same hybrid engine that was used in 2025, but the engine and the compression versus the hybrid engine and energy is almost 50-50. So the combustion engine power has decreased and the electric power produced by the engine has almost tripled. So we're really starting to get almost a 50-50 ratio. And there's the new ERS system. I think we've all heard that at some point. Think of it as like the little power bank that keeps all the energy and makes it and recovers it for the battery. That's what the ERS system is, if you've never heard of that. But it's a little different this year, and it can recharge the battery 2 times much energy as it did last year. And it can do it quicker, which is, per lap, is crazy and great that they're going to need more energy, especially with all these modes that they have access to deploy that. And they're running a first time ever in Formula One this year, sustainable fuel, which is really, really interesting. That has been a hot topic for many years in Formula One about sustainable fuels. Can we run on them? Can we not? Can we make that a reality? And this year they are running on an advanced sustainable fuel, which is really, really cool. Daniela, what do you got for us on the notes on this power unit changes? There's a lot of technical things. This is where we really get super engineering, if we want to put it that way, on how this engine is working. It's incredibly complicated stuff.
Yeah, so you've kind of already mentioned the energy recovery system, but that comes into a lot of play with battery saving, as this now is almost 50-50 in terms of having almost 50% of that powertrain being electric. Drivers now need to think about saving energy, which, as you might guess, in Formula E is very key. So seeing these elements be brought into Formula One, for me, is quite exciting because I really like all the strategy that comes into it. But there are many ways that drivers can save energy. And some of these we actually have already seen, for example, in lift and coast, which is when the driver will lift off the throttle as they're going around a corner and coasting through the corner, essentially. They are just moving around it without actually pressing onto the accelerator. So these are ways that they can save energy. Another way is through regenerative braking, which essentially is when a driver brakes, there is kinetic energy that kind of gets restored through the braking. Don't fully understand it, I won't lie. It is quite technical. I do remember learning a little bit about it at school, and obviously know a little bit about it from Formula E, but there is, kinetic energy that is able to kind of restore itself through braking. And then there's also super clipping, which actually is a term I hadn't heard of before. I don't know if this is a new word to you guys as well. I don't know if it's new to this season. I have just genuinely never heard of it before. But that is where electrical energy is harvested when the driver is in full throttle. So even when they have got their foot down, they can still save energy, which I didn't know. So these are multiple ways that they can save energy, which is going to be crucial. And depending on where they are on the track, how far along they are in the race, they can play out these different modes, essentially, of trying to save energy. And I think this is going to be a key theme that's going to be brought into the strategy that comes with pit stops, and like undercutting and overcutting. They're also going to have to think about the energy saving elements of this, with it being 50-50. Now, energy and the kind of like electrical aspect of it has come such a long way in the world of motorsport. If we look back to the first season of Formula E, their cars, the first generation of those cars, could not last a full race without the drivers having to actually get out of their car and jump in another car because the engines could not last the whole race.
Yeah.
Now, that is completely different. We have like the fastest cars that go from 0 to 60 in like 1.82 seconds. And
Wow.
so we've developed so much. And that, I think, is why now it is a good time to introduce this into Formula One. When Formula E have kind of got it nailed, bringing 50% of that into Formula One, I think it is the right time. If you'd said this 10 years ago when Formula E was still in their first generation of cars and they were having to jump in and out of them, they definitely weren't ready. But now we're in like the final era of the Gen 3 Evo. We're going to head into Gen 4 next season. These cars are now as developed as like right now humanly possible, and that is why it's going to work so well, I think, in Formula One. Another thing to note is that drivers can see their battery levels, which means they can also determine how they're going to save energy, and it's not just going to be reliant on their strategist. Obviously, this is a big change, not just the drivers, but also the teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting their heads around all of this, like, energy saving aspect, I think is going to be something that drivers and teams are going to take a little bit of adjustment to. Now, some drivers have been seen at Formula E races to try and see if they can understand what is going on. And I think we are going to see a bigger crossover between Formula E and Formula One, especially in this kind of learning curve that is going to be 2026. This is so new that the only other people that know how to manage this are Formula E drivers and teams. So I think we can expect that we're going to see a big crossover throughout the year. Another key thing to note is that if a driver is lifting off the throttle to recharge the battery and then active aero, that will disable it. So then you're out of active aero. So this is why strategy is going to be a key thing, because they have to be careful with what ways that they save energy when they're trying to also then attack, because if you come out of active aero, then you can't really use overtake mode or boost
Right.
button. So this all comes into play essentially.
Yeah.
But then if you do the super clipping, that actually still keeps active aero open. So that'd be a good point to use super clipping, which is when you go full throttle, to then be able to make your overtake.
Right.
In terms again of talking about the powertrain and how things have changed, they've removed a heat recovery system known as the MGUH. That
Yes.
has been removed because that was extremely heavy. Now, yes, it did help cool down the car, but it added this additional weight that wasn't necessarily that beneficial. But they do also have the MGUK, which is kinetic energy. That has remained in the car because that harvests energy under braking, also known as regenerative braking. That is 3 times as more powerful than previous models. So it now delivers 350 kilowatts to the rear wheels. Before it was 120 kilowatts. So we can see a massive development in the technology that's being used within these cars. This will then recover energy quicker when braking, coasting, and on throttle. So we can expect that drivers will then be able to save a lot more energy than they could in previous years, which obviously wasn't as big of a problem, but this year now it really is.
Whew, thank God we have you, Daniela, because honestly, I don't know what we'd do without you. All of that being said, Yasmin, obviously, with us learning about active aero, these boost modes, the way this new powertrain is working, and how drivers and strategists and teams are going to think about, well, if we do this, we can't do this, but if we do this, we can do this. How do you think this is going to change the quality of driving that we see on track? Because there's already a lot of strategy behind all these drivers and the teams behind them, but now I feel like it's going to be even more intense and involve the driver putting in more input when it comes to that strategy. How do you think that's going to change the racing that we see on track?
I think when it comes to strategy now, we might get a little bit more of the blame on the driver. Because, before we could just blame the teams, oh, that was the wrong strategy. Why didn't they make them do this instead? But now that's kind of more in the hands of the driver, which can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing. And in talks of just all these different aspects and, saving energy, the battery, and I think we're going to see probably teams, at least at the very start of this season, make a lot of strategy mistakes. And, understandably so. There's so many more aspects. You've got, which tires, the battery, and it's even for me as a fan, just kind of listening and trying to grasp all these new parts of the car. I can't imagine what the pressure the strategists are gonna feel. They already feel a lot of pressure, but to have all these different components on top of it, I mean, goddamn, they need a pay rise. I can't wait to hear what I can't wait to hear what Bernie Collins has to say about all these different aspects. Because again, she was a great strategist, but she never had to deal with all this.
Yeah.
So it'll be so interesting to hear
I
what they
think
make of this.
I think the race engineers have had a very busy off season, and it's probably felt like they more went back to uni than anything because they've been studying all of this.
Yeah, I think we also have to remember not only obviously we've got that whole energy being introduced and the strategy around that, but we do still obviously have all the regular strategies in terms of when drivers are going to pit and what tyres they're going to have and are they going to overcut or undercut. So there's added layers now to this. So I think that might be what catch out some of the teams, is that they already have enough to think about with pitting, but now they also have to consider energy saving as well.
Yeah, we already know strategy is one of the most crucial things right behind having a good car and a good driver. If you can have a good car, a good driver, if you don't have the strategy, you're falling short. And this year, I think we might see strategy maybe be even more important than some of those things. You know, maybe your car isn't as fast as everybody else, but if you have the edge on that strategy, you could, you know, maybe end up on a podium or maybe be more mid-pack than you thought you could be. So yeah, really interesting stuff. To wrap it all up, we've got category number 5, which is safety. We love more safety, especially for these drivers, and there have been some pretty good improvements here. The driver's cell is now being put under more rigorous testing. That's kind of, if you don't know what we're talking about when we say driver's cell, it's kind of the thing that surrounds a driver when they're sitting in the cockpit. It keeps them safe. It's a little shell, you could say, that really has a lot of great safety measures to keep them safe from impacts from any side that they're getting impacted on. So that's going under more rigorous testing this year, which is great. More testing is always helpful to find maybe some areas that could be improved or could be just engineered better. So that's great improvement there. Also, the roll hoop has been upgraded to sustain 23% more weight load than it did in 2025, which, if you're wondering, how much weight is that, Brianna? Well, it's around 9 family cars stacked on top of each other. So that roll hoop has definitely saved a lot of lives. It's going to save more now that it's 23% more load it can handle. So that's really good to hear as well. The front impact zone of the car has been upgraded to actually just separate into 2 different pieces instead of separate into 1. That's supposed to help if the driver is being hit from the front twice. So say, like, you know, turn 1 is a great example. Someone gets hit or bumped and they get hit in the front and then they get hit again by another driver. This is supposed to help that zone crumble a little better, separate into 2 pieces to hopefully provide the driver with more safety if they get hit again. And then the new safety lights that are on the car. We've got lights now on the rear view mirrors. We've got more lights on the back. I think this will be great, especially in the rain. Every time I see those drivers driving in the rain, I think to myself, we need more lights on this car. Like, I can't see it at all. And also these lights are going to help indicate with braking and energy deployment and things like that, but mostly for safety purposes. So it's been good to see those upgrades come through and to see that safety wasn't forgotten in this brand new year of 2026 regulations. Anybody have any comments on the safety upgrades for this year?
And mostly that the mirror lights, they are mostly on there for if a car is slowing down or stopped on track. They'll be going off so then other drivers are aware that there is a car that is stationary. But also, as like the race start is about to start and the cars are in neutral, they'll also flash then as well.
Yes. Yeah, great indicators to help also just stop accidents from happening just because of the lack of being able to see what's going on, really.
You know what? I'm always impressed when we still can find more ways to make our drivers safe instead of just being like, as an organization, you know what, we've done enough, they'll be safe. You know, we haven't had any Formula One drivers be really critically injured. That they still push forward to be like, no, we need to we can make this stronger. We can add more lights here. And I'm just happy to see that because we're still having loads of deaths within motorsport, not Formula One, but you know, other categories of motorsport can learn from the safety that we implement in the F1. So I think it's just nice to know that, and I'm sure for the drivers as well, that, you know, every year that there's going to be every regulation change is going to be something that they can feel more confident in the car that they're going to be protected.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to remember this is a sport, but it's also these guys could die every single time they go out there at the speeds they're traveling at. And I agree with you, Yasmin. I'm sure it makes the drivers happy, makes our families happy, makes the fans happy. And also, I think it's important to know, like you said, sometimes these developments in safety in F1 impact other motorsports as well, but it can also help inform and impact actual road cars that we drive on a daily basis. This kind of new engineering and innovation can sometimes spread out into what products we buy every single day. So it's good to know that somebody, there's a sport out there that's developing safety, not just for their sport, but also safety that could spread to the rest of the world and help keep regular people safe as well. So, and that goes for all the innovation actually in motorsports. If you take a look at your car now, that was probably in an F1 car years and years ago, and now has been developed to be in real cars. So yeah, it's great to see the safety, and I'm glad that was improved upon this year in addition to all the other regulations. Okay, guys, that was a lot. We know it was a lot. But we're so glad that you stuck with us till the end. And listen, like we said, this is just our best kind of interpretations of what we've done with the research that's out there to the public. Like Daniela said, we're not engineers, we're not F1 team, personnel, but we want to make sure that we bring you information that can help you understand the sport better, help you maybe feel a little bit more confident when you step into Australia 2026 here in just a couple of weeks or a week. It's crazy to think that we're going to see these cars. I'm so excited. But we're excited to be back too here at the Fastlane Collective. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you can listen to us on. And we are also over on YouTube. So if you like to watch your podcast, make sure to subscribe to the channel there so you don't miss a single episode. But until Australia, which is so crazy, we will see you at the first race of the season. All right, thanks. And we'll see you in the Fastlane. Bye-bye.
Hello, fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you, glad you came too.